Give back to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and to God the things that belong to God. Good morning. Welcome to the biblical explanation for the 29th Sunday in the Ordinary Time, Year A. The Gospel reading is from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 22, verses 15 up to 21. The same story is narrated also in Mark chapter 12 and Luke chapter 20. In all these three Gospels, this story is narrated after the parable of tenants. Of course, in the Gospel according to Matthew, the parable of the tenants is also followed by the parable of the wedding banquet. This story is a reaction of the religious leaders because they understood that in the parables Jesus was talking about them. Both Matthew's and Markan version tell us about the Pharisees and the Herodians who come to Jesus, while in the Lucan version it refers to the scribes and the chief priests who watched him and sent spies who pretended to be righteous in order that they might catch him in some statement so as to deliver him up to the ruler and the authority of the governor. About the Pharisees who joined the Herodians against Jesus, we hear only once in Matthew's Gospel in our story. But in Markan Gospel it occurs twice in our story, but also at the beginning of the Gospel in chapter 3, after a series of controversies between Jesus and the authorities, the Pharisees and the scribes. Those controversies start in chapter 2 with the healing of the paralytic and end up in chapter 3 with another healing of a man with a withered hand who was found in the synagogue. At the end of those controversies, Pharisees went out and began at once to plot with the Herodians against him, discussing how to destroy him. Wanting to trap Jesus, they put this tricky question: is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? It is not the only place in the Gospel according to Matthew when we hear about the taxes. In chapter 17 there is another story which concerns taxes. When they reached Capernaum, the collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the temple tax?" He said, "Yes, he does." And when he came home, Jesus spoke of it first, asking, "What do you think, Simon? From whom the kings of the earth take toll or tribute? From their children or from others?" When Peter said, "From others," Jesus said to him, "Then the children are free. However, so that we do not give them offense, go to the sea and cast a hook. Take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a coin. Take that and give it to them for you and for me." It is very typical for Jesus. Instead of giving direct answer, he answers with putting questions. "Why put me to test, you hypocrites?" This question, in particular the Greek term translated by putting to test, recalls the temptations in chapter 4 and also other situations when the leaders of the Israelite nation tried to test Jesus. At the request of Jesus to bring him money used for the tax, they bring him a coin, literally a denarius, the same money which is used also in other story in the Matthew's Gospel, for example in the parable of the workers in the vineyard. Then Jesus puts the second question: whose image is this and whose inscription? In this way, Jesus turns around the whole story and makes them to answer first that it is Caesar's. After hearing their answer, finally Jesus provides his own answer. "Give back therefore to Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and to God the things that belong to God." Here some translations translate the Greek verb apodidomi in the way as render to Caesar, but literally it means to give back, to pay back. The same verb is also used, for example, in the parable of the unmerciful servant who was unable to pay back his debt. It stresses more the idea of returning someone's property, as the property of Caesar is returned to Caesar and the property of God is returned to God. The combination of the Herodians and the Pharisees is like a combination of the representatives of the civil authority and the religious authorities, because the Herodians are considered as the Jews who were siding with Herod and the Romans. They put him this tricky question, hoping that he would side with one of these groups and then the other group could accuse him. If Jesus' answer were that it is unlawful to pay taxes to Caesar, then the Herodians could report him to Herod and to the Romans. But if Jesus was saying that it is lawful, then the Pharisees would accuse him. Jesus in his answer made a clear distinction between the matters, the responsibilities, duties towards the civil authorities, towards the society, and the others which belong to God. And this statement of Jesus is not only the answer given to the Pharisees and the Herodians, but it is a statement valid for us Christians. We have our responsibilities towards the society, but also our responsibilities towards God. Wishing all of you a nice day and a fruitful reading of the Gospel of Matthew.